Straight to a Fox News alert. An Air India plane with 244 people on board bound for London Gatwick Airport crashing shortly after takeoff.
A plane exploded in mid-air over India. Another landed on the wrong runway in South Korea. And passengers were literally thrown into the ceiling by turbulence. Over 310 people died and dozens were injured. So what the heck is going on with aviation in 2025? Is flying becoming more dangerous, or is there something much bigger happening behind the scenes? Let's start with the numbers, because numbers don't lie. According to the International Air Transport Association, flying is still super safe. In 2024, there were only 1.4 accidents for every million flights. That's actually better than the 5-year average. And when it comes to accidents that cause deaths, they're even rarer. Commercial flying has become so advanced that serious crashes almost never happen anymore. But here is where things get tricky. June 2025 did not feel safe at all. Why? Because so many major incidents happened back to back. It was not just one scary story, it was a whole bunch of them in a single month. Over just 30 days, more than 310 people died in aviation-related accidents around the world, and more than 60 people were injured, many of them during turbulence or emergency landings. That's not normal. Even though flying is statistically safe, when multiple disasters happen in a short time, it really shakes public trust. People start thinking flying is getting riskier, even if that's not exactly true. Experts call this a risk cluster. It means that sometimes bad events just happen close together by chance. If you look at the bigger picture over a few years, it all evens out. But when you're living through a month like June 2025, it definitely feels like something is going wrong. And honestly, these clusters can be a wake-up call. They expose weak spots in the system, whether that's aircraft design problems, pilot fatigue, poor maintenance, or even outdated airport infrastructure. That's why we can't just brush it off as bad luck. We have to look deeper, find the patterns, and fix what's broken before the next disaster hits. So, let's rewind to the biggest shock. On June 12, 2025, at 1:44 p.m. IST, an Air India Boeing 787A Dreamliner, tail number VT-A&B, took off from Ahmedabad, heading to London Gatwick. There were 229 passengers and 12 crew members on board. But within just 3 minutes, something went terribly wrong. People on the ground said they saw the plane struggling to climb. It wasn't going up like it should. Then, disaster. The aircraft hit the top of the BJ Medical College dormitory buildings and exploded in a massive fireball. The crash killed almost everyone on board, plus 33 people on the ground. Only one passenger survived. In total, 265 lives were lost. Black boxes were recovered in about 3 days, and the data showed that everything looked normal at first. The flaps, thrust, and systems were okay. But suddenly, the plane pitched nose down at just 600 feet above the ground. That's way too low. And strangely, something called the ram air turbine, or RAT, activated. That's a tiny backup power generator that only should come out if the plane loses power. But why would it deploy during takeoff? This is a huge deal for many reasons. First of all, this is the deadliest crash ever involving a Boeing 787. Second, it's the first time a Dreamliner has crashed with deaths in India. Third, it's putting even more pressure on Boeing, which is already being questioned in the US for poor safety checks and production issues. After the crash, India's Aviation Authority, DGCA, asked for all pilot training records. There were already rumors that Air India pilots were flying too many hours without enough rest, and now everyone wants answers. Witnesses say they heard a loud boom and then saw fire raining from the sky. It was that sudden. Now, investigators are asking serious questions. Did a software glitch cause the plane to go nose down? Was the captain experienced enough on the 787? And why are flights allowed to take off so close to residential areas? Sadly, this crash has exposed a lot of problems that cannot be ignored anymore. Let's move on to another near disaster, this one in South Korea. On June 12th, a China Airlines flight, number CI-186, was flying from Taipei to Busan. South Korea. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-800 with a tail number B18661. Everything was going fine until landing time. The air traffic control told the pilots to land on runway 18R, which is a proper runway meant for landings. But somehow, the pilots landed the plane on a parallel taxiway instead, a lane meant for planes to drive slowly to and from the runway, not to land on. Yes, that's a big mistake. Luckily, nobody was injured. The landing was smooth and the plane didn't hit anything. After landing, the pilots realized what had happened, and they safely taxied the aircraft off the taxiway without causing any damage. Now the big question, how did this even happen? Investigators believe the cause to be a mix of small problems. The crew had already been working for 14 hours, so they were probably super tired. Just before landing, they were told to change runways, which can mess up your focus. There were wind shear warnings, basically dangerous wind conditions that filled the radio with alerts and may have caused distractions. Together, these things may have confused the pilots and caused something called expectation bias. That's when your brain expects to see something like a runway and just convinces you it's there, even though it's not. So the pilots may have thought the taxiway was a runway and landed without realizing the mistakes. Okay, let's talk about something that freaks out even the most chill flyers, turbulence. And this June, it was all over the skies. Plus, one flight had a serious pressure drop that made passengers think they were gonna die. Let's go through 4 scary in-flight incidents that happened back to back. While flying at about 35,000 feet over Bavaria, Germany, this Ryanair plane suddenly hit clear air turbulence, the kind that's impossible to see on radar. The plane shook so badly that 8 passengers and 1 crew member got hurt. The pilots had to divert and land at Memmingen Airport for safety. Videos from inside the plane show how bad it was. Overhead bins popped open, and 1 poor passenger actually flew up and hit the ceiling because they were not wearing a seatbelt. Later, investigators confirmed the seatbelt sign was on, but some passengers had removed theirs. This shows how important it is to always keep your seatbelt fastened, even if the ride feels smooth. You never know when turbulence might strike. And just when you thought that things could get worse, it did. Just weeks later on a flight over the US East Coast. About halfway through the flight, the aircraft was flying over South Carolina when it got hit by sudden turbulence. 5 passengers were hospitalized after landing. Thankfully, the plane landed safely in Charlotte. The FAA used this moment to remind everyone, turbulence is the #1 cause of in-flight injuries and not engine problems or crashes, like most people think. But turbulence did not stop there. Just 5 days later, it struck again. This time, even the plane got damaged. Just 40 minutes after takeoff, the JetBlue flight started to shake violently. The turbulence was so strong that 1 passenger who was not wearing a seatbelt actually banged her head on the ceiling, cracking a panel. The flight immediately turned around and diverted back to JFK Airport. Medics met the plane at the gate, and luckily, the injuries were not life-threatening. But again, the main issue was that the passenger was not strapped in. These kind of stories make you realize how dangerous even a normal flight can get if you're not careful. And while turbulence was scary enough, what happened on the very next flight was every passenger's worst nightmare: losing air at 36,000 feet. While cruising at 36,000 feet, Spring Japan Dreamliner suddenly experienced a massive cabin pressure drop. That means the air inside the plane started thinning fast, making it hard to breathe. Within seconds, oxygen masks dropped down, and the pilots descended quickly to about 10,500 feet, where the air is thicker and safer to breathe. Some passengers even started texting their loved ones goodbye, thinking it might be the end. Thankfully, all 191 people on board survived. The airline later said that the problem may have been caused by a faulty outflow valve sensor, a small part that controls air pressure inside the cabin. Aviation authorities are now reviewing the part urgently, and other airlines are being warned to inspect their planes. This is a great time to explain what cabin pressurization means. When a plane flies high, the outside air is too thin to breathe, so the inside of the plane is pressurized, kind of like blowing up a balloon, to keep you safe and comfy. If that system fails, it becomes a serious emergency within seconds. So far, we've talked about big airline incidents, but June did not spare private and domestic flights either. Here are two smaller but still important incidents that happened last month. A corporate jet, a Gulfstream 4, was landing at Cuyahoga County Airport in Cleveland when it skidded off the wet runway. It ended up crashing into the EMOS bed. That's a special area at the end of a runway designed to stop aircraft from going too far. There were 17 people on board and thankfully no one got hurt. But the crew later said that there was an issue with the elevator cable. That's a part that helps control the up and down movement of the aircraft. It's now being looked into by aviation safety teams. And while that's happening in the US, a domestic flight in India had its own mid-air trouble. A domestic airline flight from Chennai to Hyderabad with 165 people on board had to turn back mid-air. Somewhere near Nellore, the pilots noticed a technical problem. We don't know exactly what yet, but it was serious enough to cancel the flight. The pilots returned to Chennai and landed the plane safely. Everyone got off without injury. Right now, an investigation is still going on to figure out what went wrong. Okay, we've gone through all the scary incidents from June, but now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Why are these things happening so often now? Is it just bad luck? Or are there deeper problems building up in the aviation world? Let's start with turbulence. According to a study from the University of Reading, there's been a 55% increase in clear air turbulence over the North Atlantic since 1979. That's a huge jump, and scientists believe it's caused by climate change. Basically, as the planet heats up, the jet streams, which are fast-moving air currents way up in the sky, are changing, becoming more chaotic. This makes turbulence stronger and more common. And here is the scary part. The regions hit hardest are North America, China, and Japan. The same places where the major turbulence events happen in June. To deal with this, some airlines are using a system called Turbulence Aware, created by the International Air Transport Association. It lets planes share real-time turbulence data with each other, so pilots can avoid bumpy areas. It's a smart idea, but not all airlines use it yet, and that's a problem. So yeah, if you feel like flights are getting bumpier lately, you're not imagining it. They actually are. Now let's talk about Boeing. After the 737 MAX disaster a few years ago, where two crashes killed 346 people, Boeing has been under heavy scrutiny. And now, US senators are talking about Boeing fatigue. Basically, people are tired of hearing about Boeing problems. Also, whistleblower hearings, where former employees speak out, are starting up again soon. They will focus on quality control at Boeing factories, how the planes are built and tested before delivery. And after June's incidents, those questions are only going to get tougher. So yeah, Boeing's got some serious explaining to do. Now let's talk about the airports and airspace themselves. Take Busan Airport in South Korea, for example. The China Airlines crew landed on a taxiway instead of the runway. Why? Because the layout is confusing, especially at night or during bad weather. Or take Ahmedabad Airport in India, where the Air India 171 crash happened. The airport is surrounded by tightly packed neighborhoods. When the plane crashed, it hit buildings and killed 33 people on the ground. That's because the airport was built when the city was much smaller, and now there's not enough open space around it. These two cases show us something important. Our airport systems haven't grown with the demand. Back in the 1990s, airports were designed for fewer flights and smaller crowds. Today, air travel has doubled, even tripled in some places. But runways, terminals, and air traffic systems haven't caught up yet. That is why IATA is now asking for something called a Single European Sky Reform, but for Asia. It's a way to simplify and coordinate air traffic control across countries, making flying smoother and safer. Right now, pilots deal with different systems and instructions every time they cross a border, and that adds stress and chances for mistakes. Just look at the data. From 2015 to 2025, global air passenger traffic has grown massively, but most airports still function like they did a decade ago. After hearing about all these scary flight stories from June, it's easy to feel nervous about flying. But the truth is, you can actually do a few simple things that can make a big difference when you're up in the air. It's quick, free, and could literally save your life. Now it's your turn. What is the scariest flight experience you've ever had? Drop it in the comments below and subscribe to our channel for more updates like this.